Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Victor Newman sat in his office at Newman Enterprises, the weight of his empire pressing down on him, the usual tension of his personal life threading through every decision he made. His phone sat silent for a moment, an unusual calm that felt almost eerie, and across town Nikki Newman, sitting in her elegantly appointed living room, held a cup of tea that had long gone cold, her mind swirling with thoughts of the last confrontation she and Victor had endured. The shouting, the accusations, the threats that had become almost ritualistic in their marriage, and yet, today, something in the air felt different, a subtle shift that neither could quite put their finger on, as if the city itself had exhaled, giving them a brief reprieve from the chaos that so often defined their lives. And as Victor reviewed the latest financial reports, a part of him, the part that Nikki knew was still capable of tenderness, recognized the futility of continuing the war that had consumed them for weeks, months, perhaps years, and he made a decision, a quiet but monumental choice, to put aside the grudges, the schemes, the endless battles for control, if only temporarily, to preserve the fragile semblance of peace that still existed between them. And Nikki, sensing a change in Victor's demeanor when he arrived at her doorstep later that evening, poised and commanding yet strangely subdued, understood that this was not a typical truce negotiated through lawyers and threats but a mutual acknowledgement that the energy spent on conflict had become a weight neither of them could carry indefinitely. And they talked, first cautiously, each word carefully chosen, like dancers in a delicate choreography of compromise, acknowledging past wounds while tentatively exploring the possibility of a future where they could exist without constant war, where the love that had brought them together all those years ago could, if only slightly, outweigh the bitterness and betrayal that had accumulated. And as the night deepened, the city lights casting long shadows across the room, Victor and Nikki found themselves reminiscing, laughing softly at shared memories, the tension slowly melting into something more familiar, a warmth that reminded them of why they had chosen each other in the first place. Yet both remained acutely aware of the fragile nature of this pause, knowing that tomorrow could bring back the storm, but tonight, at least, they allowed themselves the luxury of peace, a temporary sanctuary in a life otherwise dominated by power struggles, family drama, and personal vendettas. And in this suspended moment, they discovered that putting the war on pause did not mean surrender but rather a strategic withdrawal, a chance to recalibrate, to heal, to remember that beneath the layers of ambition, pride, and past grievances, there existed a bond forged through decades of shared experiences, heartbreak, victories, and disappointments. And as they sat together, side by side on the sofa, the faint sounds of the city below providing a rhythm to their thoughts, they understood that this truce was not weakness but strength, an acknowledgement that survival in Genoa City required not just dominance but also wisdom. And as Victor reached for Nikki's hand, an unspoken promise passed between them, a recognition that while the battles of tomorrow were inevitable, tonight they would cherish this fragile harmony, and perhaps in doing so they could find a way to navigate the treacherous waters of their world with a renewed sense of purpose, a willingness to collaborate rather than clash. And though the shadows of past conflicts lingered, the pause allowed them to envision a future where their union was not defined solely by war but also by the quiet victories of understanding, empathy, and resilience. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, the silence between them spoke volumes, a testament to the power of connection that transcended arguments and schemes, a reminder that even in the relentless chaos of Genoa City, moments of peace were possible if only one had the courage to embrace them. And with a final glance, a lingering touch, Victor and Nikki acknowledged that their decision to put the war on pause was not an end but a new chapter, an interlude where love, respect, and partnership could take precedence, however briefly, over vengeance, manipulation, and rivalry. And in that quiet, profound realization, both felt a renewed sense of agency, a subtle but undeniable shift in the dynamic that had long defined their relationship, as if the universe itself had momentarily aligned to allow them a respite from the storms they had weathered for so long. And in the depth of that night, surrounded by the comfort of familiar surroundings and the presence of someone who had known them in their highest and lowest moments, Victor and Nikki allowed themselves to hope, not blindly but cautiously, that this pause could serve as a foundation for something more enduring, a testament to the resilience of their bond amidst the unpredictable tides of family loyalty, corporate intrigue, and personal ambition that had always shaped their lives. and as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, they remained side by side, the world outside still turbulent, but within that room, there existed a rare, almost sacred tranquility, a fleeting but powerful moment where Victor and Nikki Newman chose each other over conflict, love over resentment and connection over isolation, and in that choice, the promise of tomorrow shimmered faintly on the horizon, fragile but unmistakable, a signal that even in the heart of Genoa City, the fiercest of battles could be paused, if only to remind two people why they had ever been drawn together in the first place. And as they finally rose to greet the day, the weight of the city, their families, and their pasts pressing gently against them, both carried a quiet determination. Shared understanding that putting the war on pause was not surrender, not defeat, but rather the most cunning and compassionate move they could make, an acknowledgement that sometimes, the truest power lay not in domination but in restraint, and as Victor and Nikki stepped out into the morning light, their hands brushing briefly, a silent pact formed in the stillness of the night lingered between them, a testament to the enduring complexity, passion, and resilience of their relationship, a story of love and rivalry, strength and vulnerability, in which the pause itself became a declaration, a moment of clarity in the otherwise chaotic, unrelenting whirlwind that was life in Genoa City, a moment that would ripple forward, subtly shaping the decisions, confrontations, and reconciliations that awaited them, a narrative thread of hope and unity woven into the fabric of their tumultuous lives. An acknowledgement that even amidst the relentless storms of betrayal, ambition, and family drama, Victor and Nikki could, if only for a fleeting moment, step back from the brink, embrace one another, and find in that embrace the quiet power of a truce, a testament to the enduring complexity, depth, and undeniable magnetism that had always defined their love and their life together. As Victor and Nikki stepped out into the morning light, the city of Genoa City stretched before them, alive with its usual blend of ambition, intrigue, and whispered secrets, the streets bustling with people whose lives intertwined with theirs in ways both profound and trivial, and even as the hum of the city grew louder, a subtle, almost imperceptible calm lingered between them, a shared understanding that this rare pause was theirs alone to inhabit, free from the constant pressure of corporate battles, family betrayals, and the manipulations of those who sought to exploit every weakness. And as they walked side by side toward the Newman Enterprises building, each step a quiet affirmation of their choice to suspend hostilities, Victor's mind, always razor-sharp, cataloged potential threats, allies, and opportunities, yet Nikki sensed a softness, a willingness to allow space for compromise, for vulnerability, something that had been nearly impossible to extract from Victor in the past, and they reached the entrance, where the familiar hustle of employees and executives awaited, the ebb and flow of business, deals, and whispered schemes momentarily muted by the silent accord between them, and as Victor greeted his staff with his usual commanding presence, Nikki followed closely, projecting an aura of calm confidence, a subtle message to everyone around that despite the turbulence of recent weeks, the Newmans were united, at least temporarily, in a purpose greater than petty rivalry, and in the boardroom, where contracts, balance sheets, and power plays usually dictated every word, Victor allowed himself a brief moment of reflection, considering not just the empire he had built but the woman who had been by his side through every high and low, the countless battles waged in public and in private, and Nikki, noticing the rare vulnerability in his expression, realized that the pause they had agreed upon was more than a temporary truce. It was a recalibration, a chance to examine what truly mattered beyond stock prices, hostile takeovers, and family scandals. And as they sat together in the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, the tension that had so often defined their interactions dissipated into a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement of shared history, mutual respect, and a love tempered by decades of trials. And outside, the city continued its relentless march, unaware of the fragile peace that now existed in the heart of the Newman legacy, a peace that could be shattered in an instant yet for now held firm. And as Victor began reviewing the latest reports, Nikki reached across the table, lightly touching his hand, a gesture of reassurance, of solidarity, and he, in turn, allowed himself to relax just slightly, a small but significant surrender to the moment, acknowledging that the greatest battles were not always won through dominance but sometimes through restraint, patience, and understanding. And as the hours passed, the Newmans moved through meetings, negotiations, and strategy sessions with an ease that surprised both them and their staff, a subtle shift in energy that spoke volumes about the power of their unity, and yet, Even as they navigated the complexities of business with this newfound synergy, the specter of past conflicts lingered, a reminder that Genoa City was a place where alliances could shift in an instant, and enemies lurked in the shadows, waiting to exploit any sign of weakness. But Victor and Nikki, grounded in their shared decision to pause their war, carried themselves with a confidence born of experience, a silent signal to all who might challenge them that while the battle lines could always be redrawn, the bond between them remained resilient, adaptable, and enduring, and in the quiet moments between meetings, when the room emptied and only the soft hum of air conditioning filled the space, they allowed themselves to breathe, to reflect, and to savor the rare serenity that now enveloped them, a serenity that was both a gift and a strategy, a conscious choice to prioritize connection over confrontation, even if temporarily, and as the day stretched into evening, the golden light casting long shadows across the walls of Newman Enterprises, Victor and Nikki found themselves walking the halls together, side by side, occasionally sharing a smile or a private glance that spoke of history, understanding, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the battles they had chosen to set aside, and in these small moments, they recognized that the pause was more than just a ceasefire. It was an opportunity to re-examine their roles not only as adversaries and partners, but as individuals whose lives were inextricably linked by love, loyalty, and the shared experience of raising a family, building an empire, and surviving the relentless scrutiny of a city that thrived on scandal. And as they returned to the privacy of their penthouse later that night, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars, they allowed themselves to unwind, shedding the masks of power and control that had become almost second nature, revealing glimpses of the vulnerability, fear, and hope that underpinned their existence. And in the quiet intimacy of their home, far removed from boardrooms and social expectations, they talked at length, revisiting memories, sharing dreams, and cautiously imagining a future where collaboration could take precedence over conflict. A future where the pendulum of power need not swing endlessly between them but could instead find moments of equilibrium. And as they spoke, Nikki noted the subtle changes in Victor's tone, the softening of his voice, the fleeting glimmers of humor that had long been buried beneath layers of strategy and dominance. And Victor, in turn, listened to Nikki's reflections, her insights, and her unwavering commitment to finding common ground, recognizing that this pause was not a concession but a deliberate choice, a strategy that allowed them to step back from the brink, to reassess, and to fortify their relationship against the inevitable storms of family intrigue, corporate maneuvering, and personal vendettas that defined their lives. And as the hours passed into night, the tension that had once been almost a tangible presence between them was replaced by a quiet understanding, a tacit agreement that they could, if only for a moment, exist not as adversaries but as partners, allies, and perhaps even as lovers unburdened by the weight of constant conflict. And in the silence of their penthouse, punctuated only by the occasional distant sounds of the city below, they allowed themselves the luxury of reflection, gratitude, and hope, realizing that the pause they had enacted was more than a temporary reprieve. It was a deliberate and powerful act of self-preservation, mutual respect, and recognition of the bond that had endured despite the chaos. And as the night deepened, they embraced, not out of obligation or routine but out of genuine recognition of the value of this shared interlude. And in that embrace, they found a renewed sense of purpose, a subtle yet profound affirmation that even in the turbulent, unpredictable world of Genoa City, moments of peace, understanding, and connection were possible if only one had the courage to step back from the brink and choose unity over conflict, even if only for a fleeting but meaningful period. And as sleep finally claimed them, the city continuing its ceaseless rhythm beyond their walls, Victor and Nikki rested not as warriors but as partners, aware that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, and new tests of loyalty and strategy, yet fortified by the knowledge that they had, for now, put the war on pause, a choice that would reverberate through their lives, their family, and their empire, shaping the decisions, confrontations, and reconciliations that awaited them with a subtle but undeniable impact. And in that fragile, luminous moment between night and day, the Newmans discovered that the power of pausing, reflecting, and choosing one another could, if nurtured carefully, provide a foundation stronger than any victory won through force, manipulation, or intimidation, a foundation that could sustain them through the unpredictable, storm-laden landscape of their world, a foundation built not merely on ambition or pride but on love, trust, and the rare, courageous willingness to set aside conflict in favor of connection, understanding, and the enduring possibility of reconciliation. And as dawn painted the city in hues of pink and gold, Victor and Nikki, hand in hand, looked out over Genoa City, aware of the challenges ahead yet grounded in the moment, in the pause they had created together, knowing that while tomorrow would inevitably test them, today they had reclaimed something far more precious than victory. The affirmation that in the midst of chaos, even the fiercest warriors could choose peace, empathy, and above all each other, a lesson both profound and delicate, fragile yet infinitely enduring, a testament to the resilience of their love and the enduring complexity of their intertwined lives. Even as the first rays of sunlight bathed Genoa City in a soft, golden glow, Victor and Nikki remained in the quiet cocoon of their penthouse, a fragile sanctuary carved out amidst the constant turbulence of their lives, the distant hum of traffic below a reminder that the world continued its relentless pace, but within these walls time seemed to slow, allowing them to savor the rare serenity of being together without schemes, accusations or threats hanging over their heads. And yet, the pause they had enacted was never naive. Both understood the delicate balance of power, the ever-present possibility that any misstep, any careless word, could unravel the fragile accord they had painstakingly established. And so, as they sipped their morning coffee, Nikki spoke of plans for the day with a soft yet purposeful tone, weaving in considerations of family gatherings, charitable commitments, and subtle maneuvers within Newman Enterprises, while Victor, ever the strategist, nodded with quiet approval, mentally cataloging allies, competitors, and potential risks, but he also allowed himself small moments of indulgence, glancing at Nikki with a look that conveyed both affection and recognition of their shared resilience, a language they had perfected over decades of marriage, conflict, and reconciliation. And outside the windows the city stirred, unaware that the most potent drama was unfolding not in boardrooms or courtrooms, but within the walls of the Newman penthouse, where two of its most formidable inhabitants had chosen, if only temporarily, to place trust above suspicion, love above vengeance, and connection above control. And as the morning progressed, the calls, emails, and meetings that usually dictated the rhythm of Victor's life flowed with an unusual smoothness, the staff sensing the subtle shift in energy, the rare equilibrium between power and patience. And while the truce was silent and unspoken to others, it radiated through the office, influencing negotiations, decisions, and alliances, reminding everyone that Victor Newman's authority was tempered not merely by dominance but by an occasionally rare wisdom that recognized the strength in restraint, while Nikki, moving through her day with quiet confidence, provided the complementary balance, her presence softening tensions, calming tempers, and gently reminding those around her that even in a city defined by ambition, manipulation, and betrayal, diplomacy, empathy, and human connection held immense power. And as the afternoon sun slanted across the skyline, casting long shadows over Newman Enterprises, a series of subtle but meaningful interactions unfolded. Employees approached with questions, partners with proposals, and family members with requests, and each time, Victor and Nikki navigated the encounters with a fluid grace born of experience, the truce between them guiding decisions in ways that were nearly imperceptible yet profoundly effective, shaping outcomes with a precision that was both deliberate and understated. And yet, as the day wore on, both were acutely aware that the pause could not last indefinitely, that the city, with its relentless appetite for scandal and conflict, would inevitably demand that they resume their roles as warriors, strategists, and defenders of legacy. But for now, they allowed themselves the luxury of anticipation, the rare ability to envision a day where cooperation and understanding could coexist with ambition and vigilance. And as evening approached, they returned to the privacy of their penthouse, the city's lights flickering on one by one, transforming the skyline into a constellation of possibility. And there, amidst the soft hum of their home, they discussed matters both trivial and profound, the care of their children, the management of Newman Enterprises,